I'm prefacing this by saying that my female 32, husband 34, is the only child in the family. His mom always wanted a grandbaby, and unfortunately, she was never able to become a grandmother as my husband was married before and his ex was unable to have kids. He also tried adoption while single but couldn't. So when we found out that we were expecting, mother-in-law started visiting daily. We didn't do that in the past. Started bringing stuff for the baby and spent a lot of money. My son is now a few weeks old. Mother-in-law retired right after he was born and told us she was making herself free and available for her grandbaby. She stayed with me for a whole 2 weeks and only went home recently. Those 2 weeks were unbearable, with her being all over me to get to the baby. I was getting fed up, but I kept my mouth shut and played nice. Then she started complaining about missing her grandbaby and not being able to see him every day and watch him grow. Finally, she sent me a list called Visitation Time. In this list, she mentioned when we're expected to bring the baby to her, 5 days a week, and spending the weekend with her, hours from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and said she had a bottle ready for feeding and a closet full of diapers. Not just that, but she wants them overnight on Monday and Wednesday. That's 2 nights a week. Now, as a new mom, I couldn't imagine having my newborn son away from me for that long, especially overnight. So I called her to give her my response, which was a no, but she ranted about how I needed to loosen up and stop being unreasonable and emotionally too attached. This made me angry, not gonna lie. So I took her list and used scissors to shred it into pieces. Then I took a picture of the paper shred and sent it to her, hoping she'd get the message and get how serious I am about my no. Apparently she cried to my husband and the whole family because they claimed I was trying to keep her only grandbaby away from her after she waited so long to have him. And my husband went off on me after coming home from work to call my move childish and pathetic. I still keep getting backlash over this, and now I'm starting to think maybe I'm in the wrong for how I behaved the entire interaction with her. But I was trying to enforce my boundaries after she brushed them off. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your mother-in-law is crazy. This lady isn't just asking to take a newborn away from its mother. She's asking to replace its mother. That's crazy enough. But then when mom reasonably and very predictably says no, this mother-in-law keeps pushing for it. It is your baby. She isn't entitled to any control over your baby. You could tell her she isn't allowed to see him at all, and she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Plus, she called OP unreasonable and too emotionally attached to her brand new baby, while demanding to see that baby almost more often than its parents. That woman is mental. If she's desperate enough, she might try and sue for grandparents' rights. Probably and hopefully won't work, considering how young the baby is, and testimony from both parents about how she is, but it's something she could try. Let this be a warning to you not to give in to her custody schedule. She will use it later as proof of her grandparents' rights. But you have to play this right. Sending the photo made you look bad and left proof of how mean you are for mother-in-law to show your husband. Instead, ignore her communication with you as much as possible. Make your plans for your son. Use Do Not Disturb to avoid being distracted by her communication. And don't take your child to mother-in-laws unless your husband is present. You aren't responsible for nurturing a relationship between mother-in-law and your child. Mother-in-law can visit you and your family when it's convenient for you. You don't owe it to her to take your child there. I can see where your husband might have thought you were childish with the photo you sent his mom. Your mother-in-law was way out of line, but instead of stooping to her crazy, take the high road and ignore it. No point giving mother-in-law any ammunition, not worth the stress. Stop it. The baby rabies is strong with mother-in-law. Grandma is bonkers, and OP's husband needs to stop being such a mama's boy and defend his still recovering from childbirth wife. OP is not the idiot. I live in a house in a semi-rural area. Think acre lots, not farmland. I moved in a year ago with just me and my dog. Neighbors are typical suburban types with the American flag on a pole, nice lawn, etc. I don't pay much attention to them. Last night their kids were setting off fireworks, driving my dogs crazy. I went out and asked them to please stop, since I thought the fireworks were probably illegal and it was causing a nuisance to the entire neighborhood. They told me they would be done in 10 minutes. So I went in and called the fire department, and they said that since I was in the county, the fireworks were not illegal. I figured I'd have to wait it out and cuddle my dogs, but I couldn't take it anymore when the fireworks were still happening 20 minutes later. I went and grabbed both my hoses and sprayed down the unused fireworks through our shared fence. They said I ruined $1,000 worth, and I asked how it would be 10 minutes with that much. He said it was none of my business. He said he was calling the police. I said, fine, go ahead, and his wife dragged him inside. I don't think I did anything wrong. I think I tried to work with them, and they lied to me. It wasn't fair to my dogs what they were doing. Am I the idiot? Edit. So, the cops just left my house after a 7 a.m. visit, and the result is I may be charged with misdemeanor destruction of property. You are the idiot. So you ruined their holiday because you were annoyed you had to comfort your dogs? I hugged my dogs for hours last night as neighbors shot fireworks off from all directions, and they are illegal in my state. But I minded my damn business because it's no different than a massive bout of thunder. My dogs will survive, and people can celebrate, especially considering how holidays have been for people the last 2 to 3 years. You sound like a miserable idiot trying to spread the misery. Considering the cops will charge you, I don't see how you could think you did nothing wrong. Are you an adult? Maybe next time you'll think twice. You tried to tell people what they could do on their property and ruin their holiday. You could have done about 1 million things before dousing their fireworks. Everyone's the idiot here. Neighbors should have been honest or even given you a warning before the fireworks. But you did something technically illegal. You could have tried talking to them again or calling the cops to complain about the noise. You would have hopefully been in a lot less crap then. My dad has passed away, and I've gotten all of his inheritance. My dad raised us in a strict military-style household. He was a horrible father who took things to the extreme in our childhood, and all of his children stopped talking to him. He treated us like we were his property and belittled us all the time, almost as if he hated our existence. He actually disowned me when I was 15 because I got pregnant out of marriage with a man who was black and kicked me out to fend for myself. So I had to figure out how to provide for myself and my child. My dad ended up contacting me a month after my mom passed away, crying and apologizing for how he treated my siblings and me, and asked if we could meet up. So I decided to meet up with my dad because even though he wasn't the greatest father, it didn't change my love for him. When we met up, my dad seemed very genuine, so I continued seeing him, increasing to seeing him 3 times a week. My dad also tried contacting my siblings, but none of them gave him the time of day. I spoke to them about the issue, and they told me to allow him to die a lonely death. Later on, my dad got super sick, and I ended up moving in with him with my 2 children to help take care of him. I learned things about my dad that I never knew, and I started to love being around him and seeing him as a different person. I chose to forgive him. It was hard looking after my dad and 2 children as a single mother, but I pushed myself through it until his death. But during the hard times, I asked my siblings for help, and they both mocked me for even helping my dad, told me I should throw him in an old age home, and even asked me to take pictures of him so they could see him weak. My siblings and my relationship used to be super close, but they've become distant ever since I started talking to my dad. Now that my dad has passed, I inherited everything from him and learned that my father owned a lot more properties and had a lot more money than I could have ever imagined. My siblings feel like they're entitled to some of the inheritance and have told me if I don't give them any, they'll stop talking to me and that I'm becoming like my dad. Since they had to go through having my dad as a father, they feel they deserve some payout. I disagree with them. The reason I got the inheritance is that I gave my dad another chance. I helped him when he was at his weakest, and I went through a lot juggling raising my children and caring for my dad without any of their help. Even when I begged them to help me, They just made fun of me for helping my dad and choosing to forgive him. Now, forgiveness is a choice, and I respect their choice not to forgive, but they didn't respect mine to forgive him and added more difficulty to my life. They act like it was either them or my dad, and now we're acting like I'm being selfish for not sharing the inheritance my dad left for me. Am I the idiot for not giving some of my inheritance to my brother and sister? You are the idiot. Be prepared to lose your siblings over it. You made your choices, and to be honest, your dad was crappy right up until he died by leaving your siblings out of his will purely for spite. He knew he was a lousy father and chose pettiness in the end. You've chosen your inheritance over your siblings. You may feel justified, but you aren't in the right, and neither was your dad. Your bed is made, and it's time to lay in it. Not the idiot. Your father had every right to leave his property to his one child with whom he had a relationship. It isn't pettiness on the deceased father's part to reward the child who loved and cared for him when he was ill. Dad wasn't crappy to the end. He sought out the OP to make amends. As she said, he cried and apologized for the way he mistreated her. OP and her father built up a relationship. Her siblings had that choice but refused to do so. They also mocked OP, a single mother with 2 children, for having a relationship and caring for her father in his home. And now that her father left her with an inheritance, they demand money and threaten emotional blackmail to make her comply? They're idiots. I don't know if you're an idiot or not. The situation's too complicated for such a simplistic judgment, but I do know you may be furthering the harm done to your siblings. I know that you'll be changing how your siblings see you for the rest of your life. They chose differently than you. They had that right. Everyone must deal with their damage in the ways that they can. It's absurd to suggest that abused people continue to have a relationship with their abuser. That's not why they deserve nothing. They deserve nothing because nobody's entitled to someone's inheritance. Her father could have donated it all to a charity or a stranger, and none of them would still be entitled. So good terms or bad terms, it doesn't matter. I don't understand why they deserve anything. Inheritance is essentially a gift that a dead person is giving. Update. Am I the idiot for not giving my inheritance to any of my siblings? I just want to clarify that I never asked my siblings to come over to my dad's house and care for him. The help I was asking for was to help with their niece and nephew. During the time my dad was sick, there were rules in place where my dad was only allowed one other person at the appointment, and his doctor's appointments were half an hour's drive away. Unfortunately, the babysitter for my children moved, so I was having difficulty finding a babysitter whom I trusted. I also want to clarify that I'm in no way upset at them for not choosing to forgive my dad. I'm upset at how they treated me for the choice I made to forgive, build a relationship, and care for my dad. They made a lot of low blows, using my past abusive relationship as ammunition. Now, I understand that they're dealing with a lot of trauma, and me seeing our dad may have opened some wounds. Maybe they feel like I chose their abuser over them, or they had to treat me the way they did for whatever reason. I don't want my children to be deprived of an aunt and uncle because of money, so I do think the best option is to give them some of the inheritance. I've not figured out the amount I'll give them or how I'll divide things. Your siblings sound like terrible people, not because they wouldn't see or forgive their father, but because they wouldn't help you with their niece and nephew, who are innocent children. Consider it a blessing to get a second chance with your dad and to have your siblings removed from your life. Keep the inheritance for yourself and your children. You can use it towards babysitters, daycare, preschool, and college, for them and yourself. Think of only yourself and your kids right now. Cheeky buggers, tell them they told him to die a lonely man. They chose to cut him off and accept the consequences. Don't expect to have a relationship with them, no matter what you do. They were raised to mistreat people. They're probably going to keep doing that. My kids speak French because my husband is from Quebec, but they also speak English because we live in an English-speaking province. So I can understand it, but my accent sucks. We're currently visiting my in-laws and everything was okay. It was just my nearly adult niece likes to tease me about my limited French. Of course, I laugh it off because she's only joking, and I'm grown enough to not take her seriously. The thing is, for dinner, everyone was spread out. I was sitting with my kids because my son wanted me to feed him. Suddenly, my niece comes up to me, says something and giggles. I was out of it because my son had just spilled his juice, and I was cleaning it up. But the next thing I knew, my other son started yelling at her. He mainly was telling her to shut up. My niece freaked out and ended up slipping on the juice. I immediately helped her up and called her parents, who started screaming at my son after she told them what had happened. I told them to cut it out and that their daughter said something to make my son react like that. My husband then talked to my son, who told them that my niece said something extremely disgusting about me. He refuses to tell anyone what she said. Finally, she admitted to saying something but won't clarify either. My husband told his sister, who said that my kid's probably making crap up and that he's lying and has anger issues. My son does have a problem with anger, but that is a genuine mental health issue he's seeing a professional for. Also, he's a tween. I didn't appreciate that, so I told my husband we were leaving. He agreed and told his sister that he was no longer paying for my niece's future. My sister-in-law and niece freaked. They begged me to talk to him, but I told them that I'd only speak with him if, number one, niece tells me what she said. Number two, they apologized to my son, genuinely. They called me a childish, selfish, and immature idiot that needs to stop being so uptight, sensitive, and dramatic over a tiny mistake, and to think about my niece's future as I'm ruining it. Am I the idiot for giving them conditions? They and my husband's other sisters think so. So does my sister, who thinks I should tell them to screw off. At that age, she should absolutely know better than to make rude remarks about people. You and your husband didn't have to fund your niece's future. You tried to do something nice, yet she chooses to be rude and nasty to you? She had to learn firsthand about biting the hand that feeds you. Plus, you gave them a reasonable compromise. Tell the truth and apologize to your son. If they don't want to do that, that's on them. Guess they don't need the money that bad. I think you probably need to remove yourself from this whole situation. Also, if they are, sister-in-law and niece, willing to let niece's future go to crap because they won't apologize, it's because they don't want your help enough. I'd even add another condition, that they apologize to you. Niece is old enough to know what she did was wrong. Even your son was old enough to understand. Niece does not get to bully you and make your family pay for her education. I agree. What she said had to be horrible. Kids will defend their parents from bad words, but based on her son's reaction, her freaking out because he understood, and no one willing to repeat it, it's bad. And to double down by insulting OP and the child, they get $0. I don't understand people who like to joke with those helping them.